Recording in progress.
I welcome all members who have logged into the virtual mini-plenary session. There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. Honourable members, before we proceed, I would like to remind you that the virtual mini-plenary is deemed to be in the precinct of Parliament and constitutes a meeting of the National Assembly for debating purposes only. In addition to the rules of virtual sittings, the rules of the National Assembly, including the rules of debate, apply. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Assembly. Members should equally note that anything said in the virtual platform is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphones, apologies, and only unmute when recognized to speak. This is because the microphones are very sensitive and will pick up noise which might disturb the attention of other members. When recognized to speak, please unmute your microphone and where connectivity permits, connect your video. Members who make use of the icons on the bar at the bottom of their screens, which has the option that allows a member to put up his or her hand to raise points of order. The Secretariat will assist in alerting the chairperson to members requesting to speak. When using the virtual platform, Members are urged to refrain or desist from unnecessary points of order or interjections. Lastly, I wish to remind you that we are meeting in a mini-plenary session, and therefore any decisions will be taken in a full plenary session of the Assembly. Honourable members, the first item on the order paper is a subject for discussion in the name of the Honourable Reddy on the appropriateness of the continued use of the term Government of National Unity, GNU, within parliamentary and governmental discourse, given the evolving political landscape in South Africa. I now invite the Honourable Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members of Parliament, the ground forces of MK and commanders of MK, and the people of South Africa. Today, I rise on behalf of MK Party to bring clarity on a term that has been misused and abused by the current administration under President Ramaphosa. It is important for us to understand that this so-called GNU is not a term that's specific to South Africa. It has been used globally in times of great crisis, where political factions come together to stabilize a nation and steer it through turbulence. This kind of unity is born out of necessity and not political convenience. Now that we've established what a true GNU is, let's discuss what it is not. A GNU is formed in spirit of national reconciliation to foster peace and stability during exceptional times, often following a conflict or a deep national crisis. It requires the inclusion of major political parties across the spectrum, representing diverse interests for the sake of the nation and not a select few for political expediency. What we see in South Africa today, my honorable colleagues, is nothing like that. This so-called GNU under President Ramaphosa is not an inclusive effort to heal the nation. It is a coalition that's cobbled together to protect political positions. Let's be honest, this is not a GNU. This is a government of national democracy. To better understand the distinction, we need only look back at 1994, when South Africa formed a true GNU. Back then, the ANC, under the leadership of Nelson Mandela, had an outright majority. Yet, in the spirit of true reconciliation, Mandela extended an olive branch to the very oppressors of our people, inviting the National Party, the predecessor of the DA, and the Inkatha Freedom Party into this GNU. The survival of that government, colleagues, did not depend on those invitees. If they walked away, the GNU would stand strong because it was built on the foundation of the ANC's majority and the genuine desire for peace and national healing. Now let's apply the same acid test to this so-called GNU of President Ramaphosa. If the ANC or the IFP were to resign tomorrow, would this government survive? The answer is clear. No, it would collapse like a house of cards. This is not a unity of strength. It is a coalition of weakness built on fear and fragile political deals. Now, Helen Zille of the DA, she admitted that Ramaphosa had to sell the idea of a GNU because his own party, the ANC, did a direct alliance with the DA. The two parties that are diametrically opposed in every respect. But this
Honourable
is no
Reddy,
GNU.
may I please just interrupt for a moment? You are breaking, and we very much like to hear you. If possible, perhaps just go to your camera so that we can hear you at least. Your connection is not very stable. Thank you. Please proceed.
Now, let's apply the same acid test to the so-called GNU of Ramaphosa. If the DA or the IFP were to resign tomorrow, would this government survive? The answer is clear. No, it would collapse, and that's because there is no unity of strength. It is a coalition of weakness built on fear and fragile political deals. You know, Helen Zille of the DA, she admitted that Ramaphosa had to sell the idea of a GNU because his own party, the ANC, would have rejected a direct alliance with the DA. But this is no GNU. This is a calculated coalition between the ANC and the DA. Two parties that pretend to represent opposite sides of the political spectrum, but now cling together to maintain power. The DA, a party that stands firmly against policies like land expropriation without compensation, nationalization, and the NHI, now sits comfortably in bed with the ANC. What kind of unity is this? It is not about uniting the country. It is about uniting political elites while the people suffer. These same parties that criticize the ANC's bloated cabinet are now part of the largest cabinet in the history of South Africa. The same voices that decried blue light brigades are now riding in those very convoys. The people of South Africa were promised change, but all they got was hypocrisy. Madam Speaker, let's not deceive ourselves or the nation. This is not a government of national unity. This is a coalition, a grand coalition between the DA and the ANC, a coalition of convenience. And the cracks are starting to show. The DA and ANC are constantly at each other's throats on crucial issues like the NHI, like we've seen this week, and in public works. How can this be called a unified government when they can't even agree on key policies that affect the lives of millions of South Africans? This so-called GNU does not represent the 65% of Black South Africans who voted for economic freedom. Their hopes for land reform, nationalization, and social justice have been betrayed by a coalition that prioritizes political deals over real change. The MK party, under President Zuma, rejects this false narrative. We stand for the true liberation of our people.
This has expired. Please wrap up.
Honorable Speaker, the people of South Africa, let us reject the so-called GNU. It is nothing more than a government of national hypocrisy. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Home Affairs.
Deputy Speaker, members of Parliament, fellow South Africans. We must make it clear from the onset that we understand that the architects and sponsors of this debate do not do so because they seek progress. The architects of this debate are simply employing tactics that are intended to portray government as an incapable of acting in the best interests of its citizens, which is far from the truth. It is only about a pseudo attempt at misleading society and creating unnecessary tension in an aggressive attempt to divide our country. But, Madam Speaker, disingenuous as the intentions may be for the architects of this debate, we are pleased that it has given us the platform to separate fact from fiction, to separate chaff from wheat, to completely put to an end the conspiracy theories that seek to demonize the government of national unity. In the 18th Brumre on Louis Bonaparte, it is Karl Marx who teaches us that men make their own history, but they do not make it as they please. They do not make it under circumstances chosen by themselves, but under circumstances directly encountered, given, and transmitted from the past. The decision to form the government of national unity was prescribed to us by the ground material conditions that prevailed subsequent to the 2024 national and provincial elections. In the 2024 national and provincial elections, the ANC secured a combined provincial and national vote of about 12.6 million, which is almost double of the electoral support secured by the second largest party. Let us make it clear here in this House, Chairperson, that none of the political parties secured a majority in this National Assembly. Even though these electoral figures could not secure an absolute majority for the African National Congress to govern alone, it however gave the ANC a responsibility to lead the process of forming an inclusive government as per the electoral mandate displayed by the people through the ballot. The absence of a clear mandate thus necessitated a cooperation, allowing parties proportional opportunity to govern together for the benefit of the people of our motherland. The ANC as a revolutionary force has always sought to act in the best interest of the revolution and the people. We have remained true to our historic duty to always find solutions that advance interests of the nation. This is relevant today that in our early democracy, the ANC having missed the mark of a two-thirds majority vote, we went back to other political parties which had also sought substantive votes in order to form a government. This came from a position of understanding that when a majority vote does not give you absolute majority, other parties must be considered in the formation of government. And the ANC has always prioritized unity of the country and the people first. House Chairperson, the most basic manner of understanding the government of national unity is by understanding its historical origins within the nexus of power sharing and democracy. It is not just about power sharing, but it is about also deepening democracy. This essentially means that governments of national unity do not just exist in the contest where there is no clear majority winner, but in an electoral process. But there are a number of issues. It does not exist only for crisis management, but it exists for coordination of better unity. Governments of national unity exist as a political tool that can also be utilized to smoothen transitions of power, to mitigate potential national crises. It is our contention that the GNU, under the circumstances, is a necessary catalyst to overcome our collective challenges. House Chairperson, at the center of the government of national unity is building of national unity, which is based on fostering national consensus on broad national issues and vision. It further assumes the active recognition, participation, and inclusion of the broader spectrum of nations' political opinion. The product of this is an integrated approach to the national questions. The assumption behind national unity is that it must arise out of internal processes based on mutual respect and fair participation in the affairs of the state and the development process. As much as others might want to argue that GNU is a foreign and unknown based in the political, parliamentary, and government terrain, this is far from the truth, House Chair. A number of countries, both in the continent and abroad, have prior experiences with the GNU. Namibia, just here across the Orange River, experienced a government of national unity in 1985. Liberia in the 1990s, Kenya in 2008, Zimbabwe in 1978 and 2009, Sweden during World War II, Italy on several occasions between 1946 and 2002, Hungary on several occasions between 1926 and 2011, Sri Lanka in 2015, Nepal in 2015. House Chairperson, there exist some shared characteristics amongst these GNUs, such as the fact that they are made up of the majority, if not all political parties in parliament. So it is untrue that GNUs are formed only in cases of crisis. The work of the GNU must not give an inch away to those who want to create pandemonium, chaos, and panic in South Africa. We know very well that there are others who strive when there is chaos and disorder. They do not even care if a cashier loses a job in a shopping mall, so long as they loot and create chaos, causing irreparable damage to our economy. We must safeguard our country from misinformation. As such, it is particularly important that the GNU must consistently take people of South Africa through consistent transparency and accountability. It is on this basis that we must support the national dialogue, because through the national dialogue, all parties, civil society groups, labor, business, and other stakeholders will work together to address the critical challenges facing the nation. The aim is for us to collectively consolidate the GNU through developing systems and mechanisms that clarify and provide solutions for possible challenges. We call on all South Africans to take part in the national dialogue and to give their support to the government of national unity as it continues with its work. As leaders of political and public representatives, we must understand and accept the responsibility that we bear. We have all been called upon to serve the people of this country, and we dare not fail them. We urge all parties in the government of national unity to remain disciplined and dedicated to delivering our three strategic priorities, which are driving inclusive growth and job creation, reducing poverty and tackling the high cost of living, and to build a capable ethical development state. The GNU is formed on clear foundational principles which are based on the respect of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. This is contained in the statement of intent. It is not true that this is just a coalition, but the statement of intent guides what unifies us. It is therefore not strange that we see theatrics by the architects of this debate who stand firmly for anti-constitutionalism and football backwardness. House Chairperson, we must be able to identify counter-revolution, especially when it comes from those who once shouted revolutionary phrases. It is Sukarno, an orator and the first president of Indonesia, who, when speaking on national building and national unity, said, even if you were a general in 1945, if you split the revolutionary national unity today, if you are an enemy of the main pillars of the revolution today, then you have become a force of reaction. Sukarno reminds us that those who we once fought alongside in pursuit of democracy and freedom must be stripped of their revolutionary outlook if they stand opposed to national unity in the current epoch. We must never allow nostalgia and rhetoric to stand in the way of our duty of work together as prescribed by President Matamela Ramaphosa. House Chairperson, we must not be delayed by doomsayers who project the GNU as a neo-colonial, anti-poor and anti-working class arrangement. The GNU, in fact, has in its fundamental principles the agenda to attain social justice, redress and equity, and alleviation of poverty as contained in the statement of intent. We will continue to ensure that we do justice to the people of this country that have entrusted us with the mammoth task of ensuring stability and peace, tackling triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, entrench our constitutional democracy and the rule of law to build a South Africa for all her people. Our country remains resilient and strong. United in our diversity, we will prosper and grow stronger. The use of the name Government of National Unity is more than appropriate. House Chair, I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. The next speaker is the Honourable Michalakis.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, at the beginning of this Parliament, when the GNU was formed, the unemployment rate stood at 33.5%. The youth unemployment rate stood at 60.8%. Municipalities owed water boards 22.36 billion rand, and they owed Eskom 78 billion rand. There were 259 pit toilets at schools across South Africa. Electricity tariffs were set to increase by 40%. 70 people were killed per day. The cost of living was increasing and people were becoming poorer. And young professionals, black and white, were leaving the country at an alarming rate to find a better life elsewhere. These are some of the problems that need to be solved. There's an endless list of things that have to be fixed. And what does the MK bring to Parliament to be debated on behalf of their voters? They don't want to debate unemployment and education or crime. This is not important to them. What is important to them is what this government, of which they are not a part, calls itself, because they are not in Parliament for the people. They don't give a flying fig about the people. They are here for themselves and their bruised egos. This, Deputy Speaker, is the official opposition. Behold, South Africa, what the alternative to the government of national unity is. They have one job to do, to be a credible alternative to the government of the day. And they did not see the need to prioritize a single issue that affects South Africans for this debate today. They will not put a single solution to the problems facing ordinary voters out there on the table today. They are irrelevant in everything that matters at the moment to South Africans, except for in a few high-priority crime investigations stemming from the Zondo Commission report on state capture. Because if they were relevant, they would have placed the plight and suffering of South Africans top of their agenda and asked for a debate on something that actually makes a difference to the lives of people. But they've never really been on the side of the people, have they? Very few of them have not had the opportunity to make a difference to the lives of South Africans. And yet, when they could make a difference, they chose to bribe, break, and plunder when they were in key positions that directly led to the hardship faced by many South Africans today. This South Africa is the alternative to the GNU, and that is why we are adamant to make this new government work. Call it what you like. Our focus is not on what we are called. Our focus is what we can do to solve the problems facing South Africans every single day by making sure our democracy is rebuilt from the rubble of state capture that thrived under Jacob Zuma, and making a difference that people can actually experience and see every day. Be it through ensuring that some elderly citizen gets an ID for the first time after waiting decades, to eradicating pit toilets in schools, firing corrupt board members of entities that should serve the public, turning South Africa into a construction site, helping to ensure fiscal discipline that will grow the economy and get investment into the country, that will create jobs and make sure that we deal with the electricity crisis. This is what we should be debating. And one day when the MK is ready to put their voters first, the DA as part of the GNU would be happy to debate these matters to showcase what our contribution is, has been, and still will be to making this country work. Deputy Speaker, shortly after the start of the 7th Parliament, a small group of minority parties, minuscule parties in Parliament, who have the shared vision of doing away with the rule of law and our democratic order, the democracy which many suffered and died for, got together to caucus because of their, or based rather, on their shared outdated ideas that have led to hardship and suffering all over the world. There's nothing progressive about them or their tired ideas, yet they called themselves the Progressive Caucus. The original Progressive Party caucus of people like Helen Suzman, Dr. Bernard Friedman, and Jan Steytler would probably have laughed at the irony, because you see, the DA's actual forerunner, Honorable Reddy, was the Progressive Party. Yet we made no noise about this. In fact, we would encourage the current Progressive Caucus to not only steal the name of our founders, but also their ideas. The ideas of liberty, human dignity, non-racialism, liberalism, individual rights. All the values and ideas that the MK and EFF despise because they despise freedom itself. So go ahead, call yourselves the Progressive Caucus. It is none of our business what you call yourselves. And it's not prescribed in any rules of Parliament or the Constitution that any political group cannot call themselves anything, because being that autocratic would ironically be the furthest thing from being progressive. But then, Chairperson, allow this government to call itself what it wishes, inside or outside Parliament. We have a precedent of a grand coalition of the majority of parties, but not all, being referred to in Parliament as a government of national unity under the leadership of President Nelson Mandela. For the second time, a government of this nature is called this way because it has at its core the aim of uniting our citizens in an effort to save our democracy. It represents a collective of 72% of the total seats of the House, and I dare say, therefore, a nation united behind our Constitution. But what we are called is almost as irrelevant as the party that brought this motion. A name should not be what we are measured or judged by. This government and the individual parties that make up its components should rather to make government and Parliament work for the people by acknowledging the issues that face voters and dealing with them. So call us what you like. It will make very little difference to us. It will make very little difference to the fact that at the core of what we are trying to achieve is to unite our nation. And therefore, Deputy Speaker, this is in reality a true government of national unity, no matter how it is referred to. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Michalakis. I now invite the Honourable Montana, and please note, Honourable members, that this is his maiden speech.
Good day, Honourable Speaker. It's actually Honourable Abada that's replacing Honourable Montana.
Please proceed, Honourable Abada.
Okay, thank you. Honourable Speaker, members of Parliament, and fellow South Africans, I greet you with the universal greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, I rise to support the important points raised by my fellow MP, Honorable V G Reddy, regarding the misuse of the term Government of National Unity, GNU, by the current administration. It is essential to clarify that the MK party under the leadership of President Jacob Zuma will not remain silent while the term is misappropriated for political convenience. I expect that some in this chamber will attempt to argue that the so-called GNU is a legitimate and necessary mechanism to ensure governance in a fractured political landscape. They will claim that the coalition between the ANC and the DA is needed to save South Africa from instability. But let's not be fooled by this rhetoric. This is not about saving the nation. It's about saving political careers and maintaining power at all costs. Let's consider the facts. The opposition may argue that this coalition is reflective of democratic compromise, a necessary arrangement where no party secures an outright majority. But, Honourable Speaker, we must distinguish between a true GNU formed out of national crisis and a coalition of convenience formed out of desperation. In a true GNU, as Honourable Reddy pointed out, the survival of the government is not dependent on individual parties holding it together. If the DA or the IFP were to pull out of this coalition, we all know what would happen. The so-called GNU would collapse overnight. This government's fragility is no secret, and the cracks are already showing. The DA and ANC may sit together at the same table, but they are constantly at each other's throats over fundamental policies. Just look at the chaos surrounding the National Health Insurance, NHI, and other key reforms. How can they claim to be united when they can't even agree on critical matters that affect the daily lives of millions of South Africans? Honourable members, the opposition will likely say that this coalition government represents an effort to unite political forces for the great good. But let me ask you this. Whose good are we talking about? It is certainly not for the 65% of Black South Africans who voted for land reform, economic justice, and nationalization. Their voices have been drowned out by political deals made behind closed doors. The promises of economic freedom have been tossed aside in favor of cabinet positions, blue light brigades, and ministerial perks. Let's talk numbers, Honourable Speaker. According to the latest statistics, nearly 40% of South Africans live below the poverty line, while the unemployment rate hovers over around 33%. These are just not numbers. These are real people struggling every day to make ends meet. And what has the so-called GNU done to alleviate their suffering? The answer is simple, nothing. Instead, they are focused on securing their own political futures with the largest and most bloated cabinet in South Africa's history. Thus is a cabinet that does not serve the people, but serves itself. The DA fellow travellers may also try to defend this arrangement by claiming that it brings stability. But how stable is a government that cannot even present a united front on the most basic policies? In the Western Cape, we see DA-led municipalities constantly at odds with ANC national policies. In KwaZulu-Natal, ANC factions fight amongst themselves, and the DA struggles to remain relevant. Where is the stability in this myth? Let me remind this House that a true GNU is built on principles of reconciliation and unity for the greater good of the nation. In 1994, under the leadership of Nelson Mandela, the ANC extended an olive branch to the National Party and the IFP. But importantly, that government has survived even if those parties had walked away. The ANC had the mandate of the people and the strength of an outright majority. Mandela's GNU was not about keeping power. It was about healing a wounded nation. What we see today is the complete opposite. This government relies on the participation of the DA and the IFP, and without them, it would crumble like a house of cards. This is not unity. It is political codependence driven by fear and survival, not by the interests of the people. The people of South Africa deserve a government that stands strong on its principles, not one that hides behind a fragile coalition. Honourable Speaker, the opposition may argue that the MK party is being overly critical, but let's be clear, we are not here to criticize for the sake of criticism. The MK party, under the guidance of President Zuma, is here to stand for the true liberation of our people. Economic freedom, land reform, and the dismantling of white monopoly capital are not just slogans. They are the unfinished business of our revolution. The current government has failed to deliver on these promises because it is too busy managing its internal squabbles and keeping its coalition intact. The people of South Africa need a real leadership, not political theatrics. We need a government that is accountable, transparent, and focused on the needs of the people, not one that hides behind a veneer of false unity. In conclusion, the MK party stands firm in its rejection, the so-called GNU. We will continue to expose its hypocrisy, its failures, and its betrayal of the South African people. The future of this country depends on honest leadership, and the MK party is here to provide just that. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Abada. The next speaker will be the Honourable Matthys.
Am I audio? Can you hear me, Deputy Chair?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh,
Please
okay.
proceed.
Greetings, Commander-in-Chief, officials, commissars, and fighters in the struggle for economic freedom in our lifetime. And of course, to you, Deputy Speaker, revolutionary greetings to the honourable members today. Deputy Speaker, at first instance of the GNU, the CIC soundly declared that there was no GNU, and rather that this was just a collision between white supremacists and house Negroes. Later, the Madam for White Supremacy came along and confirmed this arrangement, and even went as far as spilling the beans that House Negro number one successfully fooled the ANC. And this was not the first time the ANC as a collective was fooled. Deputy Speaker, we are grateful for the resolute display of superior logic from the economic freedom fighters, particularly its inability to be fooled into sustaining whiteness that has its roots in the GNU of 1994. Just this past weekend, the CIC published an article in the Sunday Times, and he puts it best, and I'm going to quote it. The third and perhaps the most fundamental similarity in contemporary political developments is South Africa's transition to democracy in the early 1990s. Born of compromise, it was during this time that the ANC's compromise with colonial settlers led to the formation of the original Government of National Unity, which became the final nail in the coffin for the former liberation movement. And then once in the GNU, the ANC abandoned all its radicalism it had preached while in the trenches. The ANC abandoned the nationalization of mines, of banks and monopoly industries. And this was the policy of most of its senior leaders had committed to do. And this change or modification of this position was presented as something inconceivable, unquote. The truth of the matter is that whether we call this the GNU, whether we call it a DA-led coalition, this is a commitment to maintaining the status quo of white ownership and control of our land and our economy. And another truth, and perhaps a discussion for another day, is that the GNU, whether it's 1994 or 2024, it is white supervision to stop real transformation of our economy. It is to stop the expropriation of land without compensation. And ultimately, it is the white establishment's thuggery to fight back economic freedom in our lifetime. Our national dialogue must focus less on the term GNU, but rather on its fundamental mission. And that is to maintain the status quo of Black landlessness and poverty in the midst of extreme wealth. And in our national dialogue, let us reflect on what the 1994 so-called GNU delivered. We have experienced what the 1994 GNU delivered. You have parents, you have grandparents that have gone to their graves without ever smelling the taste of economic freedom. And the only smell that they got was that what was on the ballot paper where they made a mark next to the ANC. And that mark maintained white control over our land and over our economy. There are too many amongst us who have never experienced opening a water tap or even using a flushing toilet in our homes. That is what the GNU of 1994 delivered. Fighters, this coalition between the white supremacists, the Democratic Alliance, and the House Negroes, the ANC, regardless of how it is dressed up, how it is dressed down. And you have heard them here today. The ANC deputy minister twerking, and then you have the DA rubber stamping it. This coalition must be aggressively fought, and it must be fought by any means necessary. Thank you.
The next speaker will be, well, I don't have a name from the IFP, but I will in any case just ask, do we have a speaker from the IFP?
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. The Speaker is Honorable Ngobo, S.L. Ngobo.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Honorable Speaker, yes, thank you. Honorable Speaker, we find ourselves in a new working environment altogether this time around, and it is of great importance that we reflect on it as we are doing now. We welcomed the invitation to participate in the Government of National Unity, and of great importance to us is how we make it work. It is important for us to ask ourselves a crucial question. How do we safeguard the values that define our democracy in this new setup, the Government of National Unity? The concept of the Government of National Unity has played a very critical role in South Africa's post-apartheid era, symbolizing a commitment to inclusivity as well as reconciliation we so much desire in our beautiful South Africa, which has not yet healed from the wounds of the past. As a party which is committed to serving the people through the principles of Ubuntu, the IFP views the Government of National Unity as a framework which aligns with these values. Chair, Ubuntu speaks to interconnectedness, mutual respect, and collective responsibility. These principles are mirrored in the idea of a government that includes diverse voices and works for the common good. Furthermore, not only is the GNU a history maker, but it is a powerful reminder that our strength as a country is found in our ability to work together across religious, ethnicity, and party lines, running in pursuit of the common good. The IFP's participation in the GNU underlines its belief in a political system which prioritizes service over power. This is very important in a political climate where a democracy becomes increasingly under threat from hegemony forces. Thus, the GNU serves as a necessary safeguard against one-party dominance, which ensures that democracy remains dynamic and inclusive. In a country which still finds itself grappling with the legacies of apartheid, maintaining the spirit of unity, it becomes essential. In closing, I would like to add some words of wisdom from a man called Abraham Lincoln, who reminds us that democracy is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And therefore, let us continue to unite and build a democracy that truly serves all the South Africans, ensuring our government remains a force for prosperity, justice, and moral integrity. Therefore, the term GNU should remain central in our parliamentary as well as governmental disclosure. Thank you very much, Chairperson Songoba Semui.
Thank you, Honourable Ngobo. I also don't have a speaker on the list from the PA, but I am going to ask, does the PA have a speaker?
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Kojane, please proceed.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and good morning. I don't think we have anything more to add that was not already stated by the Deputy Minister Nzuza, as well as the Chief Whip of the DA, Honourable Michalakis. The GNU parties serve all South Africans, and the Cabinet was established to evenly spread the vast amount of work amongst the GNU parties. Our mandate is obviously to rebuild the country with all hands on deck, and I believe that it can and will happen in a timeous manner that citizens can appreciate. Yesterday, also, Deputy President Paul Mashatile had touched on the issue of the expropriation of land without compensation, and that the land expropriation is underway, but he also cautioned that we are to equip our people to work the lands so that it can be sustainable and to assist our people financially. And just in closing, as Honourable Ngobo had said, that one-party dominance has not worked, but joining hands and uniting has already been showing good work for South Africans. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Kojane. I now invite the Honourable Mulder.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. The subject for discussion that the Honourable Reddy brought to the House today is to deal with the appropriateness of the continued use of the term of a government of national unity, given the evolving political landscape. Now, the question immediately would be, what is the evolving political landscape since the election? Quite clearly, within the government of national unity, there's no evolving differences happening or in that landscape. The only evolving differences and happenings within certain landscapes is the falling apart of the Progressive Caucus, and we have all witnessed that, where people from the different two parties involved, mostly the two bigger parties in that caucus, are leaving that party for each other. So there's an evolving situation in that regard. Both the speakers from the MK referred to the situation of the government of national unity in 1994, and they said Mr. Mandela extended an olive branch, but they don't know the real facts. The fact of the matter is that in that government, it was the interim constitution that clearly stipulated that if a party retained or attained more than 20%, they were given a position of deputy president. That's what happened to the National Party. And it also stipulated the constitution that parties with more than 5% were allowed to participate in the executive. And that is basically how that coalition then started. The Honourable Reddy also made the point to say that his problem with the current government of national unity is that it's not inclusive. And I guess it's not inclusive because MK and the EFF is not part of that. But what are the facts? Both MK and the EFF were also invited to join the government of national unity. They were both invited to join, but they have decided not to do so. And why did they not join the government of national unity? Parties that join the government of national unity are expected to subscribe to the foundational principles of the government of national unity. And what are these? The first one, 8.1, respect for the Constitution, the Bill of Rights in its entirety, a united South Africa and the rule of law. 8.2, non-racialism and non-sexism. And having listened to the speakers of both these parties, I think they've got a huge problem with the concept of non-racialism. And there are some more. 8.5, nation building, social cohesion and unity and diversity. 8.7, accountability, transparency and community participation in government. Evidence-based policy and decision-making. A professional, merit-based, non-partisan, developmental public service that puts people first. 8.10, and I think they've got a problem with this one as well, integrity, good governance, and accountable leadership. There's no reason why these two parties, if they were prepared to subscribe to these underlying principles, could not have been part of the government of national unity. But they voluntarily decided they don't want to be part of the government of national unity. Now, the government of national unity at the moment represents more than 72% of the electorate out there. Clearly, that is a very strong indication of the support of the broad public out there for this process of the government of national unity. And I believe that the government of national unity will continue to serve the public out there, and they will make a very big and strong difference in the lives of the citizens of South Africa. Parties that prevent and prefer to play opposition politics are welcome to do so, but that is just the reality. I believe that the term government of national unity is the correct term and it should be used in future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Mulder. Is there a speaker in the mini-plenary to represent the UDM? If not, we move on. Is there a speaker to represent the ACDP? The next speaker then would be the Honourable Zibi. Honourable Zibi, are you on the platform? If not, then we move on. Is there a speaker to represent the ATM? I'm starting to wonder whether I'm alone on the platform. Is there a speaker representing Al Jamaa in this debate? If not, then the next speaker on the speakers list is the Honourable Sangone of the ANC.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair, honorable members, fellow South Africans. Some of us may remember the fable, Lendo kuthiwa yintsomi inganekwane, that we were told growing up about foxes and grapes. It goes like this. It says, "Kwat kwat ngentsomi," one day, a long, long time ago, a fox saw a bunch of ripe grapes hanging from a vine and wished to eat them. He got up to reach for them, but try as he might, he just couldn't get there. So after a few attempts, he gave up. As he walked away dejected, he muttered to himself, "Oh, you grapes aren't even ripe. Who wants to eat sour grapes anyway?" This is where the term sour grapes comes from. Sour grapes is used to describe an attitude of disdain for something or making it seem unimportant or irrelevant because you failed to obtain it for yourself. Honorable members, this debate we are called to today, to be honest, is about sour grapes. For reasons beknown to themselves, the NK party refused to join the government of national unity. This is despite being invited to the negotiation table, like other political parties, by the African National Congress. To refuse was their prerogative. That the MK party is not part of the GNU does not mean it's not a GNU. The subject of this debate is moot. No matter how much the MK party may seek to characterize it as otherwise, we have a government of national unity. We are a government of national unity. The government arrangements that have been put in place following the national general elections fit the definition of a GNU, according to political science, according to global best practice, and in terms of precedence in our own country. So to quibble over nomenclature when this parliament has such a heavy workload is without a doubt diversionary, stalling, filibustering, and vexatious. The people of South Africa have mandated us to put our political differences aside and work together for the common good. And we have made good on our promise to do so. A month after the election, His Excellency President Ramaphosa announced the formation of a government of national unity that will coalesce around a common agenda of inclusive growth, job creation, and poverty reduction. To date, 11 of the 18 parties with seats in the National Assembly have joined the GNU, and they are signatories to its statement of intent. In other words, the majority of parties represented in this parliament with the majority of seats. They represent the will of the South African people, having collectively received the majority of votes cast in the elections, a whopping 71.4% together. 4 months since the election of ministers and officials, they are working within the ANC-led GNU to implement the program of the government of the day. So whether they have victories or setbacks, they are being claimed not by individual parties, but as a united government. They are also working together, not as black parties, white parties, progressives, liberals, or conservatives, but as South Africans committed to fulfilling our bold declaration encapsulated in the preamble of the Freedom Charter that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white, and that no government can justly claim authority unless it is based on the will of all the people. If this is not a unity government, then we must ask the MK party what is. Are we now to say that ours is not a unity government because one party chose not to be part of it? That, honorable members, is sour grapes. In July this year, the MK party filed papers against the SABC to try and force the public broadcaster not to use the term GNU. These papers offer insight into the party's line of thinking. The applicants describe the GNU as impugned terminology. Impugned terminology according to whom? Does the MK party, with its 2.3 million votes, claim to be speaking on behalf of the 16 million people, South Africans who cast their votes on the 29th of July, of which over 12 million were for the ANC? In its papers in the SABC matter, the MK continues and refers to what it calls the current and newly minted government, also commonly referred to as the 7th administration. It is not commonly referred to as the 7th administration. It is the 7th administration. Following from the 6th, the maths is simple. The MK party describes the ANC's approach to inviting political parties to form a GNU as politically bankrupt. Now, coming from an organization that could not even conceptualize its own logo and party name, such words are particularly ironic. In bringing this motion, the MK party has proven itself to be ahistorical, apolitical, and disingenuous. On being ahistorical, we recall that the first GNU was formed in 1994 and comprised the ANC, the National Party, and Inkatha Freedom Party. Not all parties participated in the first GNU, Notable exclusions were the PAC, the then Democratic Party, and then Freedom Front. Much like today, these parties opted not to join for various ideological and other reasons. It did not stop it from being a GNU. When the MK speaks, when we say that the MK is being apolitical, they seem to prescribe the use of the term GNU to a political arrangement that clearly fits the scope of one. A GNU is typically referred to as a coalition government consisting of all or most political parties formed during times of crisis or after conflict to ensure broad political consensus. It is clear that the electoral outcome of May 2024 met this criteria. The National Executive Committee of the ANC characterized the electoral outcome as a significant setback for the National Democratic Revolution since 1994, and rightly so. At our August Lekgotla, the ANC deliberated on the various options that were availed to us following the electoral outcome as informed by our strategy and tactics document. We were convinced that the ANC was facing an ideological and political onslaught whose objective was to remove the liberation movement completely from all levers of state power. So the options on the table that the movement considered, including going into opposition, forming a grand coalition, a minority government, and the option of forming a GNU. Now, as the leader of society, the ANC seized both the tactical and strategic initiative and galvanized all South Africans on the need for political parties to work together given these electoral outcomes and cooperate in setting up an inclusive, viable, and stable government that will address people's needs and advance the transformation agenda. The eventual outcome of forming the GNU was a result of an inclusive and extensive negotiation process between the ANC and other political parties. The signing of the statement of intent signaled our common commitment to a set of principles predicated by constitutionalism, the rule of law, creating a more just society, tackling the triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. So in doing so, the parties accepted that the GNU is the best response, not only to the electoral outcome, but to the crisis and challenges our country is facing. So the parties describe themselves as being part of the GNU. The government describes itself as a GNU. It is only the MK party who does not wish to use this term. So their grapes may be sour, but that does not change the reality. We have said that precedents exist in South Africa itself, but GNUs have also been formed in a number of other countries around the world, as been said. Some were called governments of national unity, others were called national unity governments. Give or take a proposition here or there, the meaning remained the same. And so too, in our current political conjuncture, this term is applicable, accurate, and appropriate. As former President Mbeki said just earlier this week, the GNU was a necessary intervention and should be supported by all who want the country to succeed. So we want to remind the MK party that you cannot fix a country with a dictionary. You cannot uplift millions of poverty, improve their condition, and create an inclusive economy armed with proposition. We have a GNU, it fits the definition of a GNU. To quote the famously pragmatic words of Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping, says, it doesn't matter if a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice. As the ANC will leave the semantics and the alternative facts to the MK party. We have a country to fix. We have a nation that's looking to us to heal the divisions of the past. We will continue with our unity of purpose, our common commitment to collaboration, and a shared desire for change. I thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Is there a speaker who will represent the NCC in this debate? Then we move on. Is there a speaker to represent the PAC? Is there a member of the UIT present who wishes to participate in the debate? Is there a member of Good? Not, that's also good. Then we move on. The next speaker on the speakers list is the Honourable Gamedi of the MK party, and it is a maiden speech. Don't see the Honourable Gamedi. Honourable Taibosh, I see you, your camera feed, but you must unmute if you wish to speak.
Humblest apologies, Honourable Speaker. Good morning, Honourable Members, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Taibosh standing in for Honourable Thulani Gamedi.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Honourable Speaker, the term Government of National Unity is misused It is indeed not a unity of the people, but instead a unity of a certain group of politicians who are advancing and protecting their own interest. The term GNU is born out of the ANC's desperation to hold on to power by any means necessary, even if this means selling out the revolutionary agenda they claim to advance. The Government of National Unity appears to be nothing more than the failed Democratic Alliance Moonshot Pact, rebranded under a different name. The public should not be overly excited about this development. The GNU is essentially a Trojan horse to bring the DJ into a coalition with the ANC, while sidestepping the public outrage that rejected a direct ANC-DA coalition. The rest of the political parties that make up this coalition are just add-ons, which is more like cheerleaders, to make this grand conspiracy seem like the real GNU when it is not. Fact. You can never have a government of national unity with the exclusion of the third and the fourth biggest political parties, MKP in the country. It is therefore by definition incorrect. Another fact, the DA stipulated that it will only agree to the proposed GNU if the Mkhonto Sizwe Party economic freedom fighters are excluded. These conditions reveal the underlying deception in the whole affair. The ANC has lied to the people of this country. The only honest person in this grand coalition is the matriarch called Helen Zille, who is on record telling the nation that there is no GNU and that this is the coalition of the DA and the ANC on a national broadcasting media, she told us. The ANC of Ramaphosa is intending on reversing the gains of the past apartheid era or post-apartheid era, which I choose not to call a revolution because this country has never experienced a revolution. Instead, we settled for the crumbs of political freedom given at the expense of economic and total liberation. The ANC has moved from defending the gains of democracy that the DA now being ready to embrace the very enemy it defines its existence. In this regard, have you ever paused and asked yourself as to how it came to be that Cyril Ramaphosa has found himself leading the negotiations for the 1994 transition? Who placed him there? His sole and primary mission is to subvert the will of the people and give power back to the white minority through installing the so-called Democratic Alliance, which in actual fact is the apartheid National Party. No matter how much they try to make us forget through changing their name, but the truth is a leopard can never change its spots. The National Party is alive and well in charge of the so-called GNU. The coalition vows, my apologies. I have a problem with my reading device here. Okay, let's go back. The coalition vows between the DA and the ANC seem to be already underway, and now it is time for propaganda and deception to drive the argument of this coalition, especially among the ranked and file of both parties. Former President Zuma has been new through its mercenary, Mr. Ramaphosa. In a recent interview with Sizwe Mpofu Welsh podcast, the SSCP, through its General Secretary, Solly Mapayile, has finally confessed and affirmed to what President Zuma has always known and articulated, that this is an imposter of what seems like the ANC we once knew. In fact, Solly Mapayile reiterated that President Zuma has been correct all along, and he even went to stipulate the alliance is an abusive relationship with the ANC of Mr. Ramaphosa that's autocratic. Mr. Ramaphosa does not acknowledge and recognize their presence and views and only consults with them for protocol expediency. In fact, the SACP, which is the vanguard of the working class and the workers' Federation, COSATU, to feel despondent as the ANC-NEC has been hijacked by dominant capitalist faction led by Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa and through the so-called GNU, whereby advancement of the capitalist agenda is being realized to the detriment of the liberation agenda. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Taibosh. Honorable Taibosh, a reminder, and that is a reminder to all members as well. At one point in your speech, you referred to the president only by name. Remember that our rules say that we call him either the president or at least Mr. Ramaphosa. Thank you.
My humblest apologies, sir.
Thank you. We move on. The next speaker is the Honorable Bodlani.
Thank you, House Chairperson. House Chairperson, today we are called to debate a motion titled "The Appropriateness of the Continued Use of the Term Government of National Unity Within Parliamentary and Governmental Discourse, given the evolving political landscape in South Africa." House Chairperson, the answer is in the question. The South African political landscape has indeed changed. May 2024 brought about a peaceful transition to our government. Those of us who respect and value the will of the people have accepted the outcomes of the elections, and we have put shoulder to the will for the sake of South Africa and her people. Nelson Mandela, after voting in the first democratic election in 1994, said, and I quote, "It is a beginning of a new era. We have moved from an era of pessimism, division, limited opportunities, turmoil, and conflict." Closed. Today, 30 years after this statement, 30 years later, this statement is challenged by those who obsess over a simple phrase, government of national unity. House Chairperson, the subject of this debate does nothing but attempt to plant doubt in the minds of South Africans on the validity of their government. It aims to work as a tool to divide a society that cannot afford to be sidetracked by these so-called leaders. The subject of the speech and the debate by Mr. Reddy has one objective, and that objective is to cause conflict. The debate is a clear indication that some members in this House, the words that we uttered as we were being sworn in as members of Parliament, affirming faithfulness to the Republic and obedience to the Constitution, mean nothing to their conscience. Sitting here as members of Parliament, we represent more than 60 million South Africans, a population which has elected us to make laws that will change the quality of their lives. We represent South Africans who stood in lines to cast a vote to give us a mandate to rescue and to rebuild South Africa. With 14.85% electoral support in their first election, one would think the MKP would use their first opportunity to sponsor a motion in Parliament that addresses the issues that they campaigned on. But no, the MKP is here to settle personal scores, dare I say, at the expense of South Africa and her people. One can only imagine the mess we would have been had the MK won the elections. South Africa would have been in the hands of kakistocracies who just want to put their hands in the public purse again. While we debate the frivolous motion, in the Eastern Cape, the sick and the vulnerable are unable to access healthcare because systems for ordering medicines do not work. In the Tsobotla, Northwest, streets are riddled with potholes. Western Cape and Gauteng parents are burying their children who die in gang crossfires. Gogos remain on waiting lists for RDP houses. Young people in townships are drowning in drugs. While we debate this motion, the people of Nkandla, who reside not far from the palace of the leader of the MKP, live in substandard houses. Perhaps, House Chairperson, this debate is what South Africa needs, an opportunity to identify public representatives and political parties who are ready and willing to bring to this House matters of substance, or the MKP. For the average South African, the phrase GNU does not change the price of bread. All they want is a functional government. The government of the day is functional, and it will remain functional for years to come. This debate on the use of government of national unity has undoubtedly drawn the line in the sand between those whose hopes and dreams are firmly rooted in the prosperity of South Africa versus the union of looters hell-bent on scavenging the ruins. Ruins that Ubaba contributed to as he held the corner office in the union buildings. After taking office in 2009, Ubaba, while enjoying presidential privileges and the support of his party, did not bother to raise the issues that he today wants to use for political expediency. The first administration of this parliament concerned itself with making laws to govern our country well. Fact is that the political landscape of South Africa has changed since 1994, and that the seventh administration should be preoccupied with making laws that bring us to power with the world. The DA remains committed to ensuring that Parliament works, because when Parliament works, South Africa works. The DA ministers in government, the deputy ministers from the Democratic Alliance,
Honorable
as well as
Botlani.
all the DA MPs will endeavor. Yes.
Unfortunately, your time has expired. Thank you. The next speaker is the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, the Honorable Ntuli.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Good morning to you and good morning to fellow honorable members who are part of this debate. And thank you very much for the opportunity. Well, right from the beginning, Honorable Chair, I was hoping that we will get clarification from what is meant by what is called an evolving political landscape. And I thought the sponsor of the motion will give us a bit of time to clarify what is his own understanding of the South African evolving political landscape. Now that he has not done it, and perhaps it's important that we should attempt to help him, as others of my colleagues have already done so. The landscape that we find ourselves in today is a landscape in which our country, over a period of time, since 2016, 2017, or just before that, has been disintegrating, where the levels of poverty, inequality have been deepening and increasing, where the tension amongst and between various racial groups in our country has escalated. And unfortunately, that period coincidentally also coincided with the period at which the leader of the MK party was responsible for our country and was a leader of our government in South Africa. So that is a challenge that we are confronted with, which we need to deal with. And I perfectly understand that as I listen to the speakers from the MK party, that their major fundamental concern is the exclusion from the government of national unity. The contestation about whether or not this is a government of national unity is not purely about a conceptual disagreements. It's a question of exclusion, because according to them, this government of national unity remains incomplete until and unless both the MK and their friends, the economic freedom fighters, are part of the dinner table. I think the first advice that we need to give to the MK party and their friends is that even at the time when the GNU was conceptualized and established, all parties were invited, including the MK party, who at the time were seized with their effort to dispute the elections, to challenge the legitimacy of the IEC on the basis of a very strange claim that they've acquired more than two-thirds of the elections results or support, as a consequence of which they were supposed to form government. And of course, because of their obsession with that situation, they were not prepared to listen with an open mind to a conversation that was taking place in the country, led by the African National Congress together with other political parties, to find a common ground through which South Africans can unite once again to respond to national challenges. If the MK party and their erstwhile friends do not see the crisis of inequality as a crisis, if they do not see the levels of unemployment and poverty as a crisis, then certainly it will be interesting for us to understand what is it that they define and therefore understand as the crisis, which would have necessitated the formation of the government of national unity. And I think it's important that we should make it clear to the MK party that even after we adopted the statement of intent, which was signed by 11 political parties, as was indicated by the other honorable members who spoke before me, on that statement, there is a provision that says, in an event where other parties are willing to join the government of national unity, the parties to the government of national unity will have to sit down and reflect on the application of those parties. Because my sense is that what the MK party is doing now is essentially an application to join the GNU, but they are doing it in a wrong platform. If you want to join the GNU, you are perfectly at liberty to make that application. But it's important that we follow the right channel rather than having a debate that essentially has nothing with the major challenges facing the people of South Africa. As Honorable Kusela was saying, that really we are obsessed with a discussion about the meaning of the GNU instead of reflecting to the real challenges that confront our people. This country is facing a major challenge of crime. This country is facing a major challenge of unemployment. And as parliamentarians, it's incumbent upon us, and this is what the population expects from us, that we should not only generate ideas around how to respond to those challenges, but equally evolve and produce appropriate policies and legislative interventions to deal with the crisis on the ground. Not to meet in order to reflect on the definitions, whether this is going to be a correct or a wrong definition. What is the policy perspective of the MK party, which is positioned as an alternative to what the GNU government has placed before the people of South Africa? What is the agenda that the MK party is inviting on to comment on as an alternative and as an opposition party, an official opposition party, in order for the country to engage into a constructive dialogue that must help us to solve the major challenges that we're facing? I do want to say, Honorable Chair, lolu hambe sikulona uhambo olude kakhulu. Sisuka kude ukufika la sikhona njengamanje, njengombutho wesizwe, i-African National Congress, njenganabantu baseNingizimu Afrika. And lolu hambo sasazi noma luqala, siyazi namanje nathi sesilifike sabe ingcenye yalo. Ubude balo buchaza ukuthi nenkinga zakhona zijulile futhi zinqala. Ingakho kulolu hambo kuzohambe kube khona abanye abaphuma endleleni ngoba bebona ukuthi ngeke basakwazi ukubekezelela kuba ingcenye yalolu hambo oluya la kufanele khona igcineni sigcine sikhulule khona abantu baseNingizimu Afrika. And I do want to state this very unequivocally. The ANC is not a black party. The ANC is not a party of black people. The ANC, right from its own inception, it has led the struggle in this country in order to build a non-racial society. It has never stood up anywhere in history, and it will not do so tomorrow, to say that we are a party that exists merely to serve the interest of a particular racial group. This is a formation that our people decided on more than 112 years ago as an instrument on their hands to respond to the plight of the people of this country. Of course, the majority of which are black people and Africans in general. But that is not a position in the exclusion of other South Africans in this country. Hence, throughout its own history, the ANC has had within its own ranks very progressive comrades of Indian origin and comrades of colored and white origin. And so the perspective that is being advanced here, that the ANC has betrayed its own historical mandate, and the assertion is being made that the betrayal of that historic mandate has to do with a cooperation with parties that are led by other racial groups in our country. It's not a correct representation of what the ANC has historically stood for. And it's not a correct representation of what the ANC stand for even today. Akuyona i-organization yabantu abamnyama kuphela i-ANC. Eyabo bonke abantu baseNingizimu Afrika abafuna ukusebenza ndawonye ngokubambisana ukuxazulula zonke inkinga esibhekene nazo. Siwumbutho wesizwe siyafisa ukunxusa amalunga eshamthetho sikazwelonke nabantu bakithi bonkana ukuthi njengoba sisohlelweni lokulungiselela i-national dialogue, let's use the opportunity of the national dialogue honestly to reflect to the major challenges that are confronting our country. Not a definition of what is in place today is whether a government of national unity or it is not a government of national unity. It is, in fact, a government of national unity. And we are very determined, we are very focused in ensuring that it succeeds. We know that the prayers of the MK party and others is that it does not succeed. But we're quite...
Thank
you very much.
Your time has expired. Honorable Reddy, as the sponsor of this debate, it's your time to reply.
Thank you very much. The Chief Whip of the ANC has confirmed that the ANC no longer serves the aspirations and the hopes and dreams of Black people in South Africa. What we've heard today is a cynical game of semantics, trying to sugarcoat the collaboration that they call the so-called GNU. But the truth is plain to see. The DA and the ANC are now in bed with each other, and no amount of denial can change that. When Mr. Ramaphosa became the president of the ANC, the situation for the Black masses went from bad to worse. The evolving landscape, and this is what I want to tell the Chief Whip, we see today is not one of hope or progress, but one of betrayal. The so-called, it is a grand coalition with the DA, is only going to deepen the suffering of the Black majority. That is why Mkhonto Wesizwe refuses to be part of this grand coalition under Mr. Ramaphosa. We saw the hidden agenda and exposed those behind this unholy alliance. This so-called GNU is nothing but a desperate attempt by white monopoly capital to keep its hold on the economy while the masses are left to struggle. Members of this House defend this coalition. They can go and tell their fables to their supporters. But the reality is this GNU represents less than 40% of our country's population. And under this arrangement, there is no hope for the poor, the Black majority, or the marginalized. This is not unity, it is exploitation. Mr. Ramaphosa and his backers are nothing more than puppets of the very business elites who have drained this country's wealth for decades. And this is a message to voters who are going to the polls this coming week in the local government elections. Know that your vote for the ANC is a vote for the DA, and your vote for the DA is a vote for the ANC, because that's what it has become today. The only party that continues to fight for the emancipation of the majority of South Africans in this country who are still wallowing in poverty and in desperation is the MK party, led by President Jacob Zuma. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Reddy. Honorable members, that concludes this debate. We now move on to the last item on the order paper, which is a motion in the name of the Honorable Malema. I now recognize the Honorable Malema. Honorable Malema. It would seem the Honourable Malema is not on the platform. Is there another EFF member who is going to take charge of the motion?
House Chair.
Honourable Matthys.
Yes, thank you. Commissar Imbuseni will be doing the debate. The CIC is having network issues, so if you can just bear with us just for a second, please.
Is Honourable Ndlozi on the platform?
No, there's a crisis on the EFF benches. Don't worry.
Honourable members, no, please. We've been very diligent
Don't start.
in following the rules. Let's please none of us who are not recognized unmute and speak. Honourable members, this debate has concluded slightly early. Let's pause these proceedings, suspend it for 5 minutes, and then hopefully by then the Honourable Ndlozi would have joined. Honourable Matthys and others of the EFF, if you can please just request him to not delay the proceedings for more than 5 minutes.
No problem. Thank you, House Chair. And the crisis is there by the ANC. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Honourable Matthys. Let's all please give an opportunity for the debate to continue. It's an important topic. Let's not start heating up the room yet. Thank you. Thank you, honourable members. I believe we are ready to proceed with the last order of the day, a motion in the name of the Honourable Malema, of which we were informed that the Honourable Ndlozi would take charge of. I see that he has joined now. Honourable Ndlozi, I recognise you.
Thank you kindly, Chairperson. Quick apology, I was logged in on the other mini-plenary, so I'm here now. In this past week, there was a debate in the House, as all of us are aware, regarding the matter of extortion syndicates, both in the formal and informal sector in South Africa. And this debate, the urgency of this crisis was proven, and our greatest fears were confirmed. Our greatest fear was that there is no practical plan to curb the rise in organized crime, and it is for this reason it is spiraling out of control, because the criminals know that they have an upper hand on an unstoppable, corrupted, and incompetent state, in particular the police force. The communities are being forced to pay protection fees to operate businesses, to avoid harassment, and to ensure their assets are not vandalized. Do not trust the channels established by the ruling government, because whistleblowers are killed every day in this country. Community forums cannot work with the police, because it is the police, in most cases, who are compromised in informing criminals about who is reporting them. The government is complicit in the extortion of our people, and it is for this reason that we want Parliament to establish an ad hoc committee of inquiry constituted by multiple political parties, so that people can tell us directly who are those amongst us as politicians and the people in general, and the police and government as law enforcement, that are actually the extortionists themselves. This government must concede that on its own it has lost the fight against extortion. This government has failed street hawkers in Delft Township, who must pay protection fee for selling cabbage on the side of the roads or risk being shot. This government has failed the owners of beer houses just up the road of the Long Street, who after 15 years have had to close their businesses after bravely resisting these criminals, even after a security guard of the establishment was shot dead in cold blood. This government has surrendered to criminality, and this criminality means that infrastructure development cannot be of progress in many provinces, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal. Because any project of building roads, building schools, houses, and fix hospitals and schools, a gang can bully government for 30% of such developments, or nothing will progress. In the Eastern Cape in Umtata, the rot is so deep that just 2 days ago, a criminal who referred to himself as the chief was shot out, was in a shootout with the police because he was running an extortionist ring, and that was demanding protection fees for primary schools and high schools. The rot is so deep in Kabeja that if you do not want your car to be vandalized in your yard, you must pay a protection fee. In Kabeja, the extortion has become so brazen that they even target homes that are seen to be in a mourning period. During funerals, they set up tents, and the extortionists arrive even under those conditions of the cloud of death. Chairperson, extortion in South Africa has surpassed petty crimes, and it has become a threat to the very human rights and dignity enshrined in our constitution. If we do not unite beyond our differences to crush extortion, then it will be business as usual. Hospitals are shut down as indicated. Roads will continue to have potholes because criminals do not care about road safety. The next target will be the lines, will be the SASSA grant recipients, because these extortionists do not have any limits. House Chairperson, it is imperative that we investigate the impact of this form of criminality in South Africa, with specific focus on the affected provinces of Western Cape, Eastern Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal, as well as Gauteng. It is these provinces where owning and running a small business has become an application for murder. We need to establish an ad hoc committee. Parliament must go to the people. It must go at the center of this horrendous crime and be part of the defense of our people. We as Parliament must intervene. Let me be very clear, House Chairperson, this government is a victim of its own incompetence in fighting crime. You yourself as government need protection from the extortion in order to conduct service delivery. Chairperson, we need to come together and sit down and hear the views of ordinary South Africans, business people, informal businesses, security experts, policymakers, civil society, faith-based organizations, so that we are all able in the process to unite them to fight this phenomenon. We need to be tough on crime, ruthless against those who try to earn profit using violence to undermine the hard-earned work of South Africans. This process does not need so-called criminal experts to sit comfortably in their houses and air-conditioned offices as sympathizers of criminals. At a national level, we need to adopt the approach of the Commissioner of the Police in KwaZulu-Natal, Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. Mkhwanazi does not negotiate with gun-wielding criminals. He does not sit at a round table with murderers and extortionists. He hunts them down and arrests them. In the name of our fighter, who was a prominent member of the Defenders of the Revolution in Soshanguve, Fighter Mafa, in the name of all who have lost their lives, we're calling on Parliament to go to the ground through an ad hoc committee and hear our people directly. And perhaps our people will speak freely about those in the police stations, those in the NPA who are willing to sell dockets for criminals who are murderers, those in the correctional service who are easy on criminals, for these crimes get planned within our prisons themselves, so that those who are within government, in municipalities, in departments, and many SOEs who are collaborating in extortion can be named, shamed, pursued, and put away in society. We must not negotiate with the protection fee gang.
Honorable Ndlozi.
Call on members to adopt this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Plaatjes.
Thank you, and Honorable House Chair, members of this House. Chair, just as the colleague before me have acknowledged that just a few days ago, we gathered here in this Parliament for the Minister to table a ministerial statement on the rise of a crime in this country. The Minister actually outlined how deep this crime is running in our community and how much agitated our communities are, and the mood and experiences and the reflection of the mood of our communities in the country over this crime of extortion. The Minister went further in outlining a police intervention. He raised the fact of collaborative and cooperative approach to dealing with crime by outlining the cooperative agreement between national, provincial, and local government that is piloted in the Western Cape and now rolled out in Cape Town, with its 6 districts, as a model that will replicate all metros in the country. The operational will also include CPFs and private security companies. The Eastern Cape and Nelson Mandela Bay have agreed on an operational plan, and it is currently being rolled out. That will be launched very soon. He also alluded to the meeting that Gauteng government on Thursday, and also with KwaZulu-Natal in the next coming weeks. He also outlined a series of meetings that sister departments have been having in cooperation against the current extortion that is happening in our country. Today, actually, they are setting as GCPS a cluster to tighten up the act to better synergies. He also outlined a series of meetings that have been and is going to happen. In addition, the measure outlined by the Minister that government will undertake to deal with the crime of extortion. The Police National Commissioner announced the deployment of multidisciplinary teams that have been deployed to prevent combat investigation and arrest those behind incidents of gang violence and extortion in the Eastern Cape. Honorable members, we are referring to the interventions that the Minister have outlined and making reference to the actions the National Police Commissioner are dealing with concerning the matter of extortion. Because one of the arguments made in this motion by the drafters is that the state is showing no signs of having the state is showing signs of having lost the fight against criminality, whilst the minister was here outlining a plan that they are busy with. The obvious fact is that the argument is not supported by fact, given the intervention so far by the police, as well as the initiatives taken by the JCPS cluster that is now considered today especially. Our firm belief, therefore, is that the draft resolution on this motion does not provide sound justification for any investigation to deal with extortion, as we must give relevant authorities space to deal with interventions as outlined by the minister the other day in this house. We are all very much concerned about the rising levels of crime, of extortion, and its impact on the safety of our people as well as on businesses. Extortionists are denying our people their rights to trade freely, the rights to their professions. Extortionists are interfering in the delivery of services to our people. We want to again emphasize that we condemn all acts of extortion. The so-called protection fee of 30% gang who are terrorizing our communities to demand monies for the services they did not render. We believe that the existing committees of parliament, which is the Portfolio Committee of Police, is better placed to ensure that the Department of Police implement measures to deal with the crime and of extortion. The Portfolio Committee will ensure that the Minister of Police account to it on a progress by the police to deal with extortion. We believe that holding the executive accountable, and therefore we still believe the matter best belongs to the Portfolio Committee of Police, and therefore we need no duplication of investigating committees. The regular reporting by the Minister of the Police to the Portfolio Committee will be the basis from which determination can be made as to whether additional measures are required to strengthen the fight against extortion. The appreciation should be that there is a number of crimes that are of concern, that all of us and everybody wants crime to be stopped. However, it will be impractical to establish an ad hoc committee for each and every crime that our people encounter on a daily basis. We have to, through our oversight role in Parliament, through Parliament committees, ensure that the departments and institutions that are accounting before our House implement the policy priorities to address the challenging faces by our people, including crime. As the ANC, we have outlined in our manifesto that one of our priorities of government is building safer communities. Thus, we don't say only the words, but only in words, but also in action. For the past years, we have seen the additional budget allocated to the Department of Police to further recruit police personnel that will contribute to the capacity of police to deal with crime. This added boots on ground will ensure that police visibility, as well as adding to the investigation capacity of the police. As yesterday, the President have already said that the investigating capacity of police will be strengthened. We also understand that the police alone cannot deal with the fight against crime. Therefore, collaborative and support of communities in the fight against crime is important. The criminals live amongst communities members. They are known to the communities, and therefore the communities must assist the police in rooting out a crime from our communities to build safer communities. This motion is not desirable given that it is based on arguments that are not supported by facts. Therefore, the ANC say we must allow the minister and the police to do their work and the police community to do their oversight, hold them accountable and progress on interventions. We therefore cannot support any other approach than the one already outlined by the Minister, and would only support and strengthen it. Therefore, as the ANC, we are not supporting any motion of establishing a I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Plaatjes. The next speaker is the Honorable Skosana.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I just want to say quickly that the Pillar 7 of the MK Party is very clear. It recognizes that there are serious weaknesses of factionalism and fragmentation of intelligence service in this country. It also recognizes that there's a general lack of police-community relations, muted cooperation between police and service and the crime intelligence. This honorable chair is a breeding ground for criminal syndicates to establish extortion networks in our communities. Extortion is a criminal offense defined as causing persons, institutions, organizations, and businesses to pay over money.
Honorable Skosana, my apologies. Honorable Skosana, my apologies for interrupting you. Your bandwidth is low. Sometimes it does assist if you switch off your camera. If maybe that will enhance the audio. Thanks.
Thank you. I hope I'm fine, Chairperson, and with time. Extortion has been on the lips of every South African in recent times, and as we have seen a rising in these extortion cases, as I mentioned before, there seems to be a poor police-community relation in our core communities, and we argue as MK Party that this is the result of corrupt police officials in the SAPS. Not that all the police are corrupt, but we have people who are very corrupt in our police force. Our people have lost faith in the police. Our police have become the first defense line for these criminal networks involved in extortion. The rising unemployment rate and the slow of stagnant economy has also become a great contributor to the rising criminal syndicates today. We have businesses closing their doors in all parts of South Africa as a result of the demands of protection fees by these extortionists. There's a great need for cooperation between Unified Intelligence Service and the police if we are to win this fight against extortion. In 2022, Economic Infrastructure Task Team were formed in effort to combat the extortion-related crimes and violence by, if you remember, the former Minister Peggy. Various districts were identified as EITTS, has established and have been operating ever since. However, notwithstanding the formation of the ITS in January this year, said it will be full operational unit, yet we're still seeing a surge in extortion. One can say without conviction that the SAPS and the many task teams and committees formed have been inefficient in combating these activities. We really appreciate that some of the provinces, in particular in KKZN, General Mkhwanazi has done a good job. We stand here today in what could have said to have been an epicenter of this coordinated criminal syndicate. Chair, we can sit and listen to the success, so-called success, by the ruling party now. During the time of President Jacob Zuma, socially and otherwise, the country was thriving. Now, if somebody says, like Plankett said that, no, this matter has to be only be dealt by us in the Police Portfolio Committee, it's misplaced. I think it's economical with the truth. Most importantly to us, strengthening the South African Police Service will be essential so that our communities and those affected by criminal syndicate regain confidence in the SAPS. The communities need to know that our police service are up to task and have the capacity to protect them from this terrorism. Restoring the integrity of SARS will be the first step towards regaining control over this growing problem. Ngifuna ukutsho kuwe Mgcinisihlalo ukuthi bengiqeda nakhona abantu bayalila bafuna ukuthatha umthetho ngoba uhulumende esinawo akafoni ukwenza amatjhuguluko ukuthi abantu bakhona ukuvikeleka. Abantu laba abafuna imali kosomabhizinisi laba abakhona kizo zonke indawo, in particular KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape, kakhulukazi la e-Western Cape. E-Western Cape kumbi khulu, mara ngifuna ukuthi umraro lo ungakhona uma sinabaholi abaqotho. Ngilalele lapho ubaba uNduli uleya mala ukhuselo lo wama-PPE, angazi uyamkhumbulana wena Mcinisana, naye uleya mala ngoba siyalazi iqiniso. You know, u-Oliver Tambo, ngifuna ukumquota, a former president of the ANC, into eyenzeke namhlanje bazama ukusithela ngayo. Let me open quote. If you associate yourself too close to the enemy, don't blame anyone if people conclude that we are part of the enemy. Close quote. That was O.R. Tambo. I-ANC ithengise umzabalazo wathengisela laba bendlebe esikhanyilanga. Ngikhumbula kakhulu omunye unyaka silwa lapha ekhaya kusese nomthetho webandlululo. Kunobaba we-minister ye-interior affairs bebambiza uPete Maqhawe Nduli wathi abantu abanzima masingakatsheji sizokubuswa ngebendlebe esikhanyilanga. Lokho kusho ukuthi namhlanje lento ayitshoko iyenzakele sithi iqalile. Ngiyakuthokoza Mcinisana.
Thank you. I have given you some additional time because I interrupted you, but your time has run out. I also see the hand of, thank you. I also see the hand of the Honorable Skosana. Honorable Skosana.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. I'm rising on Rule 84 on the use of unparliamentary language. The honorable member says the honorable Ntuli uleya amala, which means the honorable Ntuli is lying. So I think that is unparliamentary, Honorable House Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Skosana. The difficulty is that whilst the translation services in the first mini-plenary worked well, it failed me as the chair now. What I will do is to undertake to listen to the Hansard and come back with a ruling unless Honorable Skosana of the MK, you want to take the podium and admit to what the allegation is and withdraw. Then we can handle it in that way.
If our interpreter, honorable member, cannot interpret for you, you can't take that from an honorable member.
No, I thank you. Point taken. I will look into the answer and come back with the ruling, honorable members. We move on. The next speaker is the Honorable Cameron.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. I rise today to address a matter of critical concern. We all know about the escalating crisis surrounding the extortion and violent attacks of specifically the Intercape bus services. Now, this has happened predominantly in the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape, and these attacks represent more than just an assault on one company. It's an attack on our justice system, and basically it's an attack on the safety of millions of ordinary South Africans who really do rely on public transport each and every day. And for more than the last 2 years, the Intercape bus service has been the target of a series of violent extortion incidents. And to date, over 194 criminal cases have been opened related to extortion, intimidation, and acts of violence against this specific company and its employees. And these crimes have caused significant damage and harm, with drivers and passengers alike at extreme risk of suffering serious harm. And yet the response from law enforcement has been disturbingly inadequate. And since 2022, the Intercape bus service has been involved in extensive legal battles with the South African Police Service. And the Eastern Cape High Court has recently delivered no less than 5 judgments in the favor of Intercape, ordering the South African Police Service to take decisive action to protect the company from protection syndicates. And in fact, The court actually instructed the South African Police Service to develop and implement a comprehensive safety plan in partnership with the Department of Transport and to ensure proper investigation of the crimes committed against Intercape. And most shockingly, and this really is shocking, is that the court even declared both the National Commissioner and the Eastern Cape Provincial Commissioner of the South African Police Service to be in contempt of court for their failure to comply with these orders. And the contempt ruling should have been a wake-up call, but yet, and unfortunately, SAPS is still to fulfill its obligations, and the violence continues. Proper investigations into the criminal cases have not been conducted, and all while these syndicates reign with fear and intimidation, and this reign just keeps on growing, and this sends a very dangerous message to the public. It basically sends a message that criminal organizations can act with impunity, even in the face of court orders, and it undermines the public confidence in the police service and erodes the rule of law. These failures bring us to a fundamental issue. The first part is that the need for an integrated, coordinated approach between the South African Police Service and the National Prosecuting Authority to combat these kinds of crimes. And with this cooperation, our criminal justice system cannot function effectively. Too often, we see a lack of alignment between the investigative work of SAPS and the prosecutorial needs of the NPA. And when investigations are incomplete or delayed, the NPA cannot build strong cases. And it's simple, criminals then walk free. The crisis at Intercape is emblematic of this breakdown. And despite nearly 200 criminal cases being lodged to date, there has been little to no progress in bringing the perpetrators to book. And SAPS has not only failed to protect Intercape, but continues to fail in keeping our public transport sector safe, secure, and open for business. The result of a growing sense of lawlessness with extortion rings operating unchecked and without fear. We must see nothing less than immediate and decisive action, and there's an urgent need for a dedicated task team or force comprising of both SAPS and the NPA to address the extortion crisis facing the country. And this task force or team must be empowered to investigate attacks, collect evidence, and ensure that perpetrators are prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Such an integrated approach is not only necessary for the long overdue, and SAPS and the NPA must work hand in hand from the outset, sharing information, coordinating efforts, and ensuring that cases brought to court are built on solid investigative foundations. And this, in my opinion, is the only way that we can really restore faith in the system and ensure that justice is served. It's also important to acknowledge that the National Prosecuting Authority cannot do its job without thorough investigations by the South African Police Service, and the NPA relies on the police to gather the evidence needed to prosecute. But if SAPS does not follow through on court orders, if it does not collect evidence properly, or if it fails to act in a timely manner, the NPA hands are tied. And SAPS and the NPA must ensure that they stay in touch once cases reach the courts to ensure that evidence is ready for presentation, that case dockets are in order, and that nothing slips through the cracks that can allow these thugs to go free. This crisis also underscores the need for greater accountability within SAPS itself. The mere fact that 2 senior police commissioners were found in contempt of court speaks to a deeper problem, one of leadership, discipline, and a lack of urgency in tackling certain kinds of crime. We cannot allow these criminal syndicates to terrorize businesses and communities, and we must certainly cannot stand idly by while armed gangs invade schools and hospitals. The extortion crisis facing Intercape is a symptom of a much larger issue, an issue of state incapacity and a lack of coordination between key institutions. But, and this is an important but, it is a problem that we can fix. I really am encouraged by what seems to be decisive movement to fight back against extortionates by the Minister of Police and his team. The South African Police Service, specifically the management structure, must pull up their socks with real outcomes, and they must support the minister in his efforts to rebuild what has been broken. Let us commit today to pushing for a unified response. I would like to propose that this be referred to the Police Portfolio Committee and the Justice Committee to deal with this matter decisively. Oversight can then be done to ensure a unified approach where SAPS and the MPA work together to bring criminals to justice. And we simply owe it to the people who rely on public transport, and we owe it to the business community that drives our economy, and we owe it to our nurses and doctors on the front line. We owe it to our children, and we owe it to the rule of law. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker on behalf of the IFP to take part in this debate?
Yes, good morning, House Chairperson. It's
please continue.
Stebekulu speaking.
Okay, please continue.
Yeah, Stebekulu speaking. Thank you for the opportunity. Let me first point out, some years back, brothels and restaurants were the first casualties of the extortionists in the Western Cape, and government and SAPS just turned a blind eye, now has escalated to this stage. Extortion is a serious and unacceptable practice that has deeply affected business and the general community in our country. This crime is carried out by ruthless gangsters who use violence and fear to control communities. These criminals groups often involve poor individuals who are hired to carry out deadly acts while their leaders live in luxury, enjoying the money they get by extortion. To effectively fight this problem, our government must employ the well-trained policemen and policewomen and provide them with the best equipment and support. We also need skilled intelligence teams to identify and take down the powerful bosses who plan these extortions in our communities and in the local business. The media has shown us that these extortionists are guided by bodyguards who are armed with rifles and they're driving expensive vehicles. Chairperson, it's high time that we act decisively against these criminals. Otherwise, we will see them holding this state or this country hostage and making unreasonable demands as they are doing to business owners. Many law-abiding citizens are badly affected. House Chair, it is in its 13-point plan, the IFP emphasized the need to put South Africans first by prioritizing their safety. Minister, it is a high time that we strengthen our efforts to root out these criminals from our communities and place them in jails. We must condemn the work of SAPS in KZN, even though some progress is made, more still needs to be done to retain stability and peace in our land. Honourable Minister, these acts of extortion robs our community potential economic opportunities as it drives away investors, creates ghost towns as shops close down. It delays necessary and important infrastructure projects that come with employment opportunities for local and skilled labor. Honorable Chair, these criminals are brazen. They shoot to kill. They don't care whether you are young, male or female. If you don't meet their demand, they kill you. In the recent months, here in Cape Town, Delft and Bishop Levy's roadworks was disrupted by the extortionists. It did not stop there. It went as far as targeting waste collection and essential services. Law enforcement agencies have to accompany contractors in areas where these criminals activities are prevalent. Honorable Chair, we are clearly under siege here. A few days ago in KZN, 6 of the extortionists tried fighting off the police. This tells us isibindi lezi zigilamkhuba ezinaso kumele sisukume zonke silwe nalesi sihlava esiqeda amathuba entuthuko kanjalo namathuba okuhweba kwabantu bakithi. In conclusion, Honorable Chairperson, the House, the Honorable President, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, in his address in this House, he said, I quote, "We are building a capable ethical and developmental state, close quote. Further, the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure said, I quote, "We are turning South Africa into a construction site," I close quote. With these powerful words from the executive, let's fight off the criminals who are trying to turn our land into a crime scene. The IFP implores the intergovernmental strategy to be implemented that will clamp down this crime of extortions and bring it to extinction. Umthetho awuqine, isibalo samaphoyisa senyuswe ezindaweni ezihlonzwe njengezindaba zalezi zigilamkhuba. Amaphoyisa anikwe amathuba afanele ukwenza umsebenzi wawo, kubandakanya nomsebenzi wobunhloli emaphoyiseni ozokwazi ukunqanda lobugebengu bungakenzeki. Ngiyathokoza Sihlalo. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Sebukulu. Honorable members, we move on. Is there a speaker representing the PA in this debate?
Good morning, House Chairperson. Yes, I am here.
Honorable Kojane, please proceed.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. I will be quick. The Chairperson of the Police Portfolio Committee, Honorable Cameron, has stated correctly that there is a lack of leadership and urgency that is required. And these two are interrelated in that a productive leader will ensure the implementation of urgency. He also highlighted that the management structure must be reviewed and focused on these criminal syndicates and act swiftly. General Mkwananzi is also a perfect example of this kind of leadership and urgency coinciding. And thus we implore that this kind of leadership and urgency is done in all sub-centers as well as the community policing forums and neighborhood watches and the community to come on board using those hotlines and being protected when they are giving information. The problem is indeed tragic, but it is a problem that can be fixed. Sometimes we must use the same tactics that is used on us as citizens on the criminals. Let us also give the Minister Mchunu and SAPS this time and also conduct the necessary oversight needed to hold everybody to account. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Ngubeni.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Honorable members, I just want to underscore the shocking disappointment I think it was delivered by the Honorable Plakies of the ANC. You know, as a party unrelenting as Action SA and committed to restoring the rule of law in our country, we welcome this debate to address a cancer that is rapidly eating away at the fabric of our communities, our businesses, and our economy, the crime of extortion, hijacking, kidnapping, and ransom. This scourge is not only a brutal form of exploitation, but a calculated and organized attack on the safety, dignity, and livelihoods of ordinary South Africans, especially in the provinces mentioned in this proposal by the EFF, the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal, and might we add, most parts of our country. Extortion, Honorable Chairperson, has morphed into a shadow economy fueled by criminal syndicates who hold entire communities hostage. These groups prey on the vulnerable, imposing so-called protection fees on small business owners, contractors, and even public service projects. It's nothing short of economic terrorism, and it's crippling the very people we have sworn to protect. We cannot sit idly, Chairperson, while this brazen criminality deepens poverty, economic and fosters a fear. And so we demand action and investigation into the extent and impact of extortion. We are failing in our duty to defend the people. Here in the so-called perfectly DA-run Western Cape, which is actually the capital of these crimes, communities are plagued by criminal gangs that demand protection, money from ordinary people, small businesses, plaza shops, and construction projects. Companies have been forced to halt operations, resulting in job losses and stunted development. The state is hemorrhaging resources while organized crime is thriving.
The situation in the Eastern Cape is equally dire. Taxi Association, construction firms, and local businesses, particularly retailers who work with cash, have become prime targets for extortion. Law-abiding citizens find themselves at the mercy of violent criminal networks that act with near impunity. In KZN, a province already reeling from violence, the rise of extortion has paralyzed the local economy. Criminal syndicates have infiltrated everything from public infrastructure projects to local spaza shops, suffocating any hope of economic growth. The impact on public confidence in the state is devastating. When citizens fear extortionists more than they trust law enforcement, the rule of law is rendered meaningless. Our failure to intervene emboldens these criminals. The situation is a clear indication that we as lawmakers must respond decisively. This action efforts for parliamentary investigation into the full scope and consequences of extortion in South Africa. We need a comprehensive understanding of how these criminal networks operate, how they infiltrate industries, and what legislative and policy measures can be implemented to stamp them out. This investigation must shine a light on the complicity of certain law enforcement officers and public officials who either turn a blind eye or directly benefit from this scourge. Corruption and incompetence cannot be allowed to shield criminals while honest, law-abiding South Africans suffer. Action SA stands firm. Our people deserve a government that acts with integrity, urgency, and competence. This investigation must be the first step towards reclaiming our streets, protecting our communities, and restoring public faith in the state's ability to enforce the rule of law. The time for talk, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable members, is definitely over. It is time for us to act, and this investigation is the act we urgently need. Thank you, House Chairperson, and thank you, Honorable members.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members, is there a representative of the UDM who wishes to take part in this debate on the platform? If not, we move on. The Honorable Ghana, on behalf of RISE.
If there's one current issue that unites us in this house, is that we need the state to deal decisively with the extortion gangs that are terrorizing communities across the country. From Limpopo west to Western Cape, rural and urban communities live in fear. That we as elected officials are discussing this matter for the second time this week is proof that we see this as a priority that is taken seriously. But we must bring into action because South Africans are not safe. We are all tired of these violent and opportunistic criminals who stalk every part of our social and economic life. Schools, businesses, medical practices, pensioners, construction sites have all been captured by these gangs. Our right to live in a safe country where we can walk the streets without fear is being undermined by these criminals. The time for us as Parliament behaving like commentators must come to an end. We are lawmakers and we must provide oversight. We cannot lament weak laws that favor extortionists whilst criminals take over our country. We must act and change them. It needs to be done. Where the laws are sufficient but not effective, we must call on government officials and the executive to account before us and the people of South Africa. We must therefore interrogate the Criminal Procedure Act and the Prevention of Organized Crime Act, POCA, and decide whether they are sufficient and whether they are being properly implemented. We must do what we've been elected to do here in Parliament, which is to legislate in order to keep South Africans safe. Whilst the motion and the intent of the motion, it's in the right direction. Ourselves, we believe that the Portfolio Committee on Police, which has just been established, together with the Portfolio Committee on Justice, can effectively deal with this matter. We do not believe that an ad hoc committee will adequately deal with this matter, and that this particular work that is being asked by this motion needs to be sent to the Portfolio Committee on Police and the Portfolio Committee on Justice so that we can get these criminals in jail. If there's one institution that must develop its teeth, to keep South Africans safe and send criminals to jail, it is ourselves as parliamentarians. We can no longer just abdicate our responsibility in changing the laws, give the necessary teeth to the police and the judiciary, so that the extortionists and criminals can be sent to jail and South Africans are kept safe.
Thank you, Honorable Ghana. Is there a member representing the ATM who wishes to participate in this debate? If not, I call on any member of Al Jamal who wishes to participate. If not, then we move on to the Honorable Matafa.
Thank you, House Chair. I request to keep my video off so that I can save bandwidth.
You're welcome to do so.
Thank you so much. Chair, the motion we are debating today calls for the establishment of an ad hoc committee to investigate the impact of crime of extortion in South Africa, with specific focus on the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal. As the ANC, we believe that instead of calling for the establishment of an ad hoc committee, the motion should instead be affirming the role of the portfolio committees in Parliament in general and the PC on police in particular, and the role they should play as far as oversight is concerned to ensure that police deal with the crime of extortion. House Chair, as the ANC, we do not support the establishment of the additional ad hoc committee. We agree with Honorable Ghana that the Portfolio Committee on Police is adequate and will be guided by facts around how the police are dealing with extortion and other crimes, and in the end, make their own determination on the next course of action. The Portfolio Committee on Police has representation of all political parties in Parliament, and therefore it is perfectly suited to look into the matter of crime extortion. House Chair, let me underscore a point raised earlier by Honorable Plakis, that the African National Congress is very much concerned about the rise in the crime of extortion in our country. Extortion undermines the rights of our people as enshrined in the Constitution of the Republic. This includes the right to life, to freedom of trade, profession, and freedom of expression. We cannot allow criminals to make the life of our people unbearable under the democratic dispensation that we fought so hard for. The crime of extortion impacts negatively on business operations. It undermines service delivery processes of government. Many businesses will close because these thugs take their money and the money that they did not work for from these businesses. Over time, we have seen how criminals stole the construction of infrastructure under the disguise of being business forums that should be given 30% despite the fact that they are not intending to provide any service. This is wrong and should not be tolerated. House Chair, we are told that even pensioners in some parts of the Eastern Cape are required to put some of their grant money on their windows for these thugs to collect. These extortionists are making also the lives of our elders unbearable. Former President Nelson Mandela once cautioned us that, I open quote, a society that does not care for and value its older people denies its roots and endangers its future, close quote. This for us, Chair, is a clear-on call to all of us to afford our elders the support and protection they deserve from the broader society. We cannot allow this cruelty against our elders to continue. It must be stopped. We are arguing that, contrary to the view expressed in the motion, that the state is failing to deal with crime, the state has registered progress in dealing with some of the serious crimes, like crime of cash-in-transit robberies, which marked a decline as reflected in the crime statistics released by the Minister of Police last Friday. We also note the decline in crimes of murder and sexual offenses, excluding the crime of rape. These declines may be marginal. However, any slight decline in crime should be noted as we collectively work towards a significant reduction in those crimes. We are, however, still concerned with the crimes of assault with intention to cause bodily harm, assault GBH, crime of common assault, and the crime of attempted murder as they continue to show increases. However, we have observed that the causation factors of these crimes in the main include arguments, misunderstanding, road rage, provocation, vigilantism, and mob justice, just to mention a few. These factors point to the question of individuals in society electing to resolve their differences through violent means. Yes, police must do their work of preventing and combating crime. Equally, as a society, we are duty-bound to pay special attention on the causes of these crimes. This means that we should encourage our people to address their misunderstandings through talking to one another. As parliamentarians, we should encourage our communities to resort to negotiations to resolve their differences. We should also encourage our local radio stations to find ways of encouraging our people to solve their differences in a peaceful manner. Members, we should change the public mind on the value of talking to one another to resolve our differences. If we are to deal with crime, one of the things we should also focus on is the capacity of our law enforcement agencies to deal with crime. In this regard, we commend the intervention by government over the past few years of increasing recruitment of police personnel. This recruitment will go a long way in capacitating the police and thus add to police visibility. House Chair, as earlier indicated, we do not support the establishment of an ad hoc committee. We believe that the Portfolio Committee on Police is adequately equipped to lead the fight on extortion mafias. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there a member of the NCC who is to participate in this debate? If not, then I call upon any member of the PAC. If not, then I call on a member of the UAT who wishes to participate. Is there lastly, before we move on, a member of the good present on the platform who wishes to participate? If not, then I recognize the Honourable Schikkerling.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. South Africa really is a nation under siege. Extortion is fast becoming the most lucrative business in South Africa. According to the World Bank, crime in South Africa, including extortion, drains approximately 9.6% of our GDP every year. This staggering statistics shows just how dangerous these extortion mafias have become to the very fabric of our society. Extortion has had a significant impact in South Africa, with the provinces of the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal each experiencing its own challenges and repercussions. The tourism industry, crucial to all three of these provinces' economies, continue to suffer as extortion creates a sense of insecurity amongst visitors and investors. The World Bank estimates a yearly loss of 1.1% of our GDP from the tourism sector alone as a result of crime. The construction industry is estimated to suffer more than 40 billion in losses each year, courtesy of extortion syndicates. What began as a legitimate concern from local business forums to ensure that their communities were protected and involved in local business and building projects has morphed into a colossal criminal network that has infiltrated not only the business community, but private security companies, schools, and healthcare facilities. For years, water tanker mafias have been operating in the Northwest Province, a region that suffers from severe water shortages, causing serious harm to local communities and at a massive cost to the provincial and local governments. This water mafia has all but brought the Mulema district municipality to the brink of bankruptcy. The crisis has reached epic proportions in Mthatha in the Eastern Cape, with criminal syndicates demanding protection money from businesses, schools, and healthcare facilities alike, resulting in businesses closing down, jobs being lost, and doctors and school principals being forced to go into hiding after being threatened with extreme violence for not paying protection fees. Several of the community members are fearful for their lives and that of their loved ones. While we welcome the fact that bail has been denied to the 5 suspects that were arrested on charges of extortion in connection with an alleged protection racket targeting the Ifata School for the Blind in Mthatha, is an indictment on our law enforcement agencies that more has not been done to assist the 51 businesses that have filed interdicts against extortion groups across the country. The continued expansion of these criminal enterprises into our schools is highly disturbing development that requires immediate action. As the Honourable Minister of Basic Education said, this is turned into a crisis situation that simply cannot be left unchecked. Frankly, Honourable House Chair, the mantra that the youth is our future rings hollow in the face of these incidents. Our matriculants are entering into the last stages of preparation for their final examinations, a moment key to their future success, and yet we are unable to even guarantee learners something as basic as writing the exams in safety. If we are unable to keep our children safe in their classrooms and our nurses and doctors protected on the front line, Honourable Chair, then we have failed in our duty of care. And in light of what we see today, I can only conclude that we have failed them all miserably. We should be ashamed of ourselves. It is the responsibility of government to ensure that our most vulnerable citizens, our children, our teachers, our nurses, and doctors can trust in our best efforts possible in keeping them safe from these so-called protection mafias who are nothing more than violent, cowardly thugs who prey on the innocent and the weak and should be treated accordingly. While we welcome the Honourable Minister of Police's commitment to ensuring that crimes of extortion are prioritised going forward, progress this far has been incredibly slow, leaving more businesses, schools and healthcare facilities in the hands of lawless thugs who, under the guise of providing protection services, line their own pockets and terrorise the innocent and the vulnerable. Most of these extortionists are repeat offenders who literally get away with murder due to members of the community being too afraid of reporting crimes for fear of repercussions and having lost faith in our police services to protect them. We need a long-term solution, Chairperson, to ensure that our most vulnerable are protected and that we grow an open and competitive economy for all that is safe and secure for the next generation of entrepreneurs. What we need is a forward-thinking, multifaceted approach to address these issues, including strengthening law enforcement, enhancing community support systems, and implementing strategies to improve economic resilience. Addressing extortion effectively requires a coordinated effort, including law enforcement, government agencies, community organizations, civil society, schools, hospitals, and businesses to create a safer South Africa for our children and their children to come. The DA once again requests that we discuss the devolution of policing powers to provinces, as it is very clear that we need more boots on the ground. I second the proposal of the committee chairperson and the other speakers that this matter be referred to the Police and Justice Committees to be dealt with further. I thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Mkitama. Honourable Mkitama, you've not yet unmuted.
Thank you, Chair. I had difficulty hearing with glitches. Also, I greet honorable members in the House. Let me start by adding my voice to congratulate the MK student movement for doing so well in the SRC elections in the TUT in Tshwane. Honorable members, extortion is a symptom of a larger socio-economic problem. We won't be able to address this scourge if we do not go to the root causes. The phenomenon is a byproduct of the exclusionary economic system based on institutionalized criminality and often systematic violence. The South African economic structure is racist, anti-Black, and violent. The small extortionists are emulating the large-scale extortionists, as we have seen the banks that colluded against the rand. The anti-human character of this social and economic order manifests itself in moments of crisis. The Ramaphosa administration, or Honorable Ramaphosa's administration, has pushed the poor further into marginalization through exclusion and deepening poverty. The South African statistics says 55% of the population lives in poverty. That is 30 million people. This has caused social anomie. Poverty leads to the breakdown of all bonds that ties communities together. Poverty dehumanizes. The solution is much more involved than just policing. To end the scourge, we must address the root causes, which are social and economic. No one is born a criminal. Society creates criminals. The MK party, under the leadership of President Zuma, supports a parliamentary investigation into the grave threat to our society, the escalating crime of extortion, which is crippling our communities, particularly in the Eastern Cape, Western Cape, KwaZulu-Natal. The MK party believes that this issue is not just a matter of criminality, but a political and economic threat that undermines the very fabric of our society. Let's look at some facts. According to the recent statistics from the South African police, extortion has surged dramatically in these provinces. The Western Cape alone recording 46% increase in the cases in the last 3 years. Business, large and small, are being forced to pay protection money to criminal syndicates. The Eastern Cape has also seen a disturbing rise in the extortion-related violence. In 2023, over 500 cases were reported. The so-called construction mafia is a small replica of the massive construction mafia that kills people through substandard buildings, or the big construction companies which colluded in the building of stadia for the FIFA World Cup. They have not accounted yet. In KwaZulu-Natal has not been spared from the wave of extortion. The MK party under President Zuma has always fought for economic liberation for the majority. And we see this extortion crisis as a byproduct of the economic apartheid and continued oppression of our people. These criminal syndicates are part of the broader system of exploitation that keeps Black-owned businesses in particular from thriving. They are parasites operating in a larger parasitic environment. Honorable Speaker, the MK party believes that a comprehensive parliamentary investigation is urgent and needed to do one, uncover the extent of these extortion networks, two, examine the failure of law enforcement agencies, three, develop a national strategy to combat extortion. Four, extortion is an economic and social cancer that must be cut at its roots. It is not enough to simply condemn it. We must take decisive action. The parliamentary investigation process will be the first step to restoring the rule of law in these affected communities. The MK party supports the motion and to comprehensively investigate the causes and impact of this protection fee phenomenon. Honorable Chair, it is very strange that parties that claim to fight against corruption and crime
has unfortunately
are
now
opposing this
expired.
noble call.
Thank you. Honourable members, the next speaker is the Deputy Minister of Police, the Honourable Matale.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good afternoon to you and of the committee. In joining the debate on this subject, I wish to appreciate the leadership of Parliament for having allowed that we have this discussion, and commend the leader of the EFF for bringing the issue for discussion by the chamber, therefore elevating this matter for us to look at on a Friday afternoon to show the seriousness with which this matter is taken by our public representatives. In the presentation, Dr. Ndlozi indicated the need for us to unite to crush extortion. I fully agree with him that we should stop these extortionists from even going to target our pensioners. It's good and important that as public representatives, we should come together and pronounce in one voice our abhorrence to this form of crime in the country. However, I don't agree with the proposal in terms of the method that is being suggested, that we should have an ad hoc committee to look into this. I don't think we have arrived at that stage at the moment. The mechanisms that are currently in existence in Parliament to deal with Parliament should suffice attend to this matter. And in this regard, the Portfolio Committee on Police, led by Honorable Cameron, and whose membership Dr. Ndlozi and some of those who participated in the debate said, it is the most appropriate organ that we can use to further engage in this regard. I agree with him, and that is exactly what we are doing, Dr. Ndlozi, that we are firm in dealing with crime of this nature. The incidents of Umtata that you mentioned is just an indication of the firmness with which the leadership of the South African police, led by Minister Mkhunu, has adopted together with the management of SAPS. What you see happening, Chair, and in Umtata is as a consequence of a visit that we conducted in that part of the province with these issues that community has raised around Umtata and Gqeberha in Nelson Mandela Bay. The National Commissioner and the Provincial Commissioner have put in place a team that is dealing with this, and the incident at hand is as a result of the work that that team is doing in Umtata. It's not only in Umtata, we are responding appropriately throughout the country, including in Klerksdorp, Northwest, where cable fiber was being put and some fellows there were trying to extort from the contractor monies that they did not work for. And we responded appropriately even in that incident. And the so-called extortionist was police. We are definitely going to bring an end to the crime of extortion in the country with the approach that we have adopted.
Honorable Deputy Minister, on my side, Honorable Deputy Minister, my apologies for interrupting. On my side, your audio is being distorted. You might wish to consider switching off your video feed. That might assist.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Chair,
Thank you.
for that. I was saying a group of extortion.
They're extorting his network.
Honorable Ndlozi, no, you're better than that. Honorable, the Deputy Minister has, it would seem,
No,
dropped
thanks
off.
very much. I don't know what happened with the connectivity. I just got disconnected, but I am connected again, Chair. And I'm saying that a group of extortionists were stopped in Milnerton, and some were fatally wounded in that incident. We have drawn a line for this extortionist, and we are happy that Parliament has taken a stand to join that line, that those who are against our people must be isolated and be dealt with. And a debate of this nature is assisting in that regard. Chairperson, the South African Police Service has adopted an extortionist action plan to mitigate this threat. SAPS has established a multidisciplinary response to the criminal phenomena of construction mafia and groupings that are demanding protection fees in the provinces where they has manifested, include Western Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape, and Gauteng. These are but 4 of the provinces. It doesn't necessarily mean that these extortion groups operate in these areas. Like I've given an example of the incident in Northwest. Honorable members, we have also established a National Priority Committee on Extortions, reporting to the night joins. These committees comprise of the South African Forum of Civil Engineering Construction, Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, National African Federated for the Building Industry, South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Business Against Crime South Africa, Construction Industry Development Board, Master Builders South Africa, Black Business Forum, Crime Intelligence, DPCI, and detectives. We have also developed and are implementing the National Policing Strategy, which among others is intended to respond to such crimes. We have also ensured that additional crime prevention and combating resources are allocated. This includes specialized investigation capacity and specialized visible policing units with intention to stabilize the incidents of violence that are associated with extortion. Chairperson, we have been unequivocal in our stance to ensure that this country will not and will never be a haven for criminals or organized crime syndicates. We refuse to be held at ransom by unscrupulous criminals and criminal syndicates. SAPS, through their aggressive approach to crime, are attacking all elements of criminality and those who support crime, as evident from a number of recent incidences that are dismantling these criminal groupings and syndicate. On our Operation Shanela that we operationalized in May last year is another mechanism we've been implementing to push back the frontiers of criminality, and it has delivered desirable results. We have seen crime stats indicating a notable drop in many areas of crime as a result of these operations. We know more needs to be done and more will be done in this regard. The Economic Infrastructure Task Teams have been operational since June 2022, have been instrumental in dismantling some of the criminal syndicates operating in this space. The task team are vigorously tracking, tracing, and arresting extortionists. We have put focus on both human and financial resources to ensure that SAPS tackles this crime without fear or favor. Through all the efforts made in this regard, we have made some significant inroads, and some individuals have been forced to face the might of the law. And these individuals include the arrest of Ralph Steinfield, who is linked to the firm criminal gang grouping that is part of the construction mafia in the Cape Town area. During June 2024, this individual, together with 15 other accomplices, appeared in the Cape Town court on 32 charges. The case includes murder of Wendy Kloppers,
murder of off-duty police officer Fayaz Adams, murder of Ishmael Abrahams, who is a gang member, and attempted murders of Joel Boysen and Gareth Poch, all gang members. Their next court date is 13 September 2024. During December 2023, well-known taxi boss Bonke Makalala, 32 years old, was arrested on a number of offenses, including triple murders, attempted murder, intimidation, possession of unauthorized firearms, impersonation of a police officer. This individual is a chairperson of Ocean View Charter and vice chairperson of disciplinary committee of Santaco. Members of the public and police officers linked to this grouping are also making appearances in various courts in the Western
Deputy
Cape.
Minister, I have given you some additional time for when you had technical difficulties, but unfortunately your time has run out.
We believe it's important to discuss this matter, but the methodology going forward, the portfolio on committees is appropriately placed to deal with this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Ndlozi, it's your opportunity to reply to the debate.
Thanks very much, House Chairperson. Let us perhaps begin with the comments of the Deputy Minister. Firstly, perhaps the Deputy Minister would benefit a lot from understanding the ethical line in the separation of powers. The current debate has to do with how Parliament responds to a grave issue, and your response is that Parliament must not respond. You ought to know better. Ethically, it's really not your place to advise Parliament as a Deputy Minister and a member of the Executive on how to respond to phenomena of this magnitude. What must happen before Parliament acts, in your view? Must the extortionists come in that rebuilding of the bent down Parliament and hold those builders in ransom before you see the gravity of the matter? I think it's best in this debate that you allow the other arm of the state, which is legislative arm, to also go do its business. And therefore, this grounds the point of departure, honorable members. You can't all say there is this grave issue that is characterized in society, that is urgent, that needs an urgent response. Call on everybody else to do something different than what they've been doing in the past. Then say Parliament must be business as usual. How do you say, let's continue in our portfolio committees? Our portfolio committees have been there when the crime of extortion has been rising to the levels that it has risen. The minister's statement, which comes out of Rule 133, separates the issue precisely because it is a special issue. And our motion is in terms of Rule 253, subsection 3, which says an ad hoc committee can be established to deal with a specific matter. Now, you say that we go back to the portfolio committee, we go to the Justice Committee. Those committees operate in silos. They operate separately. One, you need a multidisciplinary approach. But two, they are inundated with other matters. They will not be able to separate this matter for the next 3 months in the This matter involves the police, the NPA, social development, correctional service. So the wisdom in the establishment of an ad hoc committee comes in a situation where you say something has reached huge proportions and therefore Parliament must go on the ground and look at this matter separately through a multidisciplinary approach. So all the arguments that say we go back to the committees as they exist, firstly are saying that Parliament must not do anything significant, it must be business as usual. Secondly, they have no appreciation that in those committees, there are multiple other institutions other than the SEPs, other than the crime of extortion that those committees are seized with. So what must Parliament do differently? That's the question which the motion seeks to answer. And as you all know, some of the members have indicated examples in the factual impact economically of the crime of extortion, 40 billion in losses annually in construction alone. This is a matter that has gone beyond the scope, and society must defend itself. The people on the ground have to defend themselves. But the question is, what is Parliament going to do differently? For an example, to show the multidisciplinary approach, just this week, our member in Soshanguve, Lebogang Mafe, was shot dead. The person that shot her dead knocked on her door. As she opened, shot her, picked her body, put it in a couch, and shot her more in front of her daughter. Then went to get the police. The person that shot her went to get the police, came with the police to come and say a person has been shot here. It is only on the basis of the lady or the daughter saying, but you are the one that pulled the trigger, that the person was arrested. He had the bravery to go and call the police. This is a person, is an ex-convict, has been in and out of prison, and there's been protection orders from the victim against him. So you see, there's NPA involved, there is magistracy involved, there's correctional services involved, there's the police involved. Parliament must go on the ground and do its part. You can't say, let's continue with business as usual. It is on this basis, honorable members and honorable chairperson, that was saying, let's adopt this motion. The differences between political parties, the GNU politics, are not going to help you in this regard. This must be a parliament of the people. It must not follow after the executive. You don't allow the executive to set an agenda for you. You are a different arm of the state. You must have your own agenda. You must have your own capacity to interact with society. This is what the ad hoc committee is going to respond to. We call on honorable members, all those who have contributed to debate. We thank you so much. Those that have agreed, Action SA, and other honorable members of MK, but we're calling on the African National Congress, on the Democratic Alliance, who are not too far. Think about it in these terms. There is a line that must always be kept. There's the executive and there is the legislative arm of the state. We are parliament. And the question for us is, what are we going to do different? The ad hoc committee is the answer to that. Let's establish a disciplinary, multi-party ad hoc committee, go on the ground, listen to our people. We may come with a report that will help the police, will help the NPA, will help our country and our people. If we do nothing, if we say we must continue business as usual, then we too are complicit in the escalating crime of extortion. Many Constitutional Court judgments have come out about the docility of Parliament, the lack of teeth of Parliament. Let's go on the ground. This is a call of the economic freedom fighters and the motion in the name of the CIC Julius Malema. Let's go on the ground through the ad hoc committee, which is a mechanism in the rules, in the Parliament framework, in the Parliament regime of holding the executive accountable, of being closer to the people, of being a caring parliament, of being a listening parliament, and of being a parliament characterized by the lived experience of our people. When we get there, we will hear more than the institutions of the state will ever hear, precisely because we are parliament. They don't come to us when they open cases of protection orders. They don't come to us when they seek justice as the magistracy or the high court. They don't. We are a different arm. We're the only ones that have not acted in a different and unique way. That ad hoc committee is that approach. We're calling on all of us next week when we vote. Let's take the weekend to meditate and to change and be reflexive and adopt this committee, this report and this recommendation to establish an ad hoc committee to go and understand the extortion crime as Parliament. Thank you very much, House Chairperson, and I thank all of you for your contributions.
Thank you, Honourable Ndlozi. Honourable members, before we conclude the business of the day, I want to return to the point of order raised earlier in the debate. The honourable members, the word lies is a very serious term because it casts aspersions on the integrity of the member that it is directed to. While we do not have an official Isindebele interpreter on the platform today, I've asked for a review of the recording. This review does seem to indicate that the Honourable Skosana of the MK did say that the chief whip of the majority party was lying, but in the absence of a direct and official interpretation available, I'm also considering the Honourable Skosana's confirmation that it is in fact not what he said, and in the circumstances will proceed to issue a general caution to members to refrain from casting aspersions on the integrity of fellow members, and in the instances where they are of the view that they hold such information that would validate such an allegation, to bring a substantive motion on the matter. Honourable members, that concludes the business of the day and the debate in this mini-plenary. This mini-plenary will now arise so that you can go and meditate and consider.